Welcome to Whispers in the Wings with director, choreographer, performer, and writer Kathleen Ann Thompson, artistic director of Bellhurst Productions. Kathleen discusses on the program an approach to some of the most challenging and complex theatrical techniques which thespians are known to whisper about in the wings of the stage. Kathleen's 25 years' experience with directing 3 schools for movement theater and directing 2 theater companies, as well as writing and performing award-winning productions for Bellhurst, has given her a lifelong love of theater. Her enthusiasm to elevate the craft of theater for all types of performers and theatrical endeavors is uplifting. We hope you will be stimulated and inspired by these discussions. Today, Kathleen explores the myth of creativity. And now, Kathleen Ann Thompson and the myth of creativity. Welcome, everybody, to this episode of Whispers in the Wings. As a teacher of drama and theater practices, I'm very well aware of how paralyzed students can be when challenged with an exercise demanding spontaneous creative responses. I always get such comments as, I'm not really very creative. I'm really good if you just give me the text and the movement and tell me what you want me to do. But I just can't be spontaneous. I feel frozen in improv. I don't know, I just come up blank. I don't have that gift. So, here we go. The myth of creativity is that it is a special gift, talent, or attribute, and that you are either imbued with it at birth, or you just missed that ability when the DNA was forming in your brain. So, the first order of understanding you need to have is that you are made in the image of God, a creator, and you cannot do anything but create. And lest you think my assumption is based solely on my faith, it is not. Neuroscience bears this out. You live every day of your life creatively. The imagination is a major part of your brain which serves your creative mentality by which you solve problems, make decisions, maneuver through life, have vision. Let's take an example. You get up in the morning, you look in the refrigerator, you're looking for milk, okay? You would like to pour some milk on your cereal and have breakfast. But, my goodness, there isn't any milk in the refrigerator. Somebody messed up on the shopping list. So, you start looking around the refrigerator thinking, what can I do? I really want my cereal this morning. Well, here's a little bit of orange juice. Well, that won't taste so good on fruit. But I have some cream here. What if I take some cream and mix it with a little water and just a tablespoon of orange juice to sweeten it up? That might not be too bad on my breakfast cereal. And lo and behold, it becomes a favorite. Something you created because something else wasn't there. You see, your mind is continually imaging, creating, pulling from resources, finding solutions to problems, making decisions, visioning the future. Even when you ride out of your house in the morning and you think, I wonder what's the shortest way into work today. There seems to be a traffic jam on my local highway. And you start thinking, you start pulling, the brain starts resourcing, and it comes up with an alternative route. This is creativity. So we need to start at that point that solidly confirms we are creative. We are hardwired to be creative. We can't do anything but be creative. So then we can ask ourselves, well, if that's so, then why do I feel so blocked, dry, empty, and terrified of being asked to create spontaneously on the stage or in improv sessions? Well, logic will tell us that if we are designed and fully capable of doing something which we feel we can't do, well, the problem is some kind of resistance. And that is exactly what famed Polish physical theater practitioner Jerzy Grotowski meant when he talked about the process of an actor needed on the stage. He said it was via negativa. In other words, your job as an actor on the stage is not to think, how can I do this? How can I do that? How can I respond here? What kind of action do I need here? No, it's to get out of the way, to remove the obstacles in your way from the organic body and soul responding in an appropriate and creative way. So let's look at what the obstructor could be. First, we need to know how the creative process works in our body. And this is how it works. All your experiences, learned behavior, emotional memory, stored knowledge, it's all in the collective unconscious, everything that's ever happened to you from the beginning of your existence. It's there to be resourced in a creative process. Now, you have a part of your brain that is hardwired. It's the limbic system in the center of your brain. It's one of the oldest parts of your developing brain, where all your primal drives and instincts for survival are. It's hardwired from birth, just like an animal. When a wild animal is cornered by a threat, he doesn't think about diplomatic detente with his enemy. No, instead, he instinctively, intuitively attacks or runs away. This portion of your brain works reflexively with your body in a closed neurological loop. So when a charging tiger appears on your hiking trail in front of you, why, you can run faster or swing a defensive weapon harder than is normally humanly possible. We don't make an intelligent decision or a rational decision to do that. We just act. Otherwise, we're dead. The collective unconscious is a rich body of, I call it a sort of a creative soup. It's rich in feeling and non sequitur images. It's a place where all experiences in your life and knowledge have dumped themselves into. It's not a place of logic. The collective unconscious is not mapped in the brain. Neurophysicists don't know where its location is, even though they know where the location of every single thing else is in your brain practically. They can even tell you which part of your brain perceives a straight line and which part of your brain perceives a curved line, but they can't tell you where the collective unconscious is. Rich in feeling and imagery and memory from your entire life is in there. The limbic system of our brain works in very close association with the collective unconscious and the visual cortex. Memory of your entire life is present. Nothing is forgotten. Everything is there. It's in pictures and feelings. The visual cortex is an enormous part of your brain real estate. It's fast and constantly active, and, well, you might say it's a little ADS, okay? It gets bored quite easily. Images come and go in microseconds. Very difficult, actually, to hold an image more than a second or two. Each image carries with it an emotional charge. Now, an imagined narrative immediately requires visual cortex to supply images. Let's take, for instance, you come home from work, you open up the door, and you go, "Here, kitty, 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 kitty," looking for that favorite little gray, fluffy kitten you left behind you, the one that always comes out of the bedroom when it hears your key in the door and runs to you. But today, there's no kitty. And immediately, your mind flashes a picture of that fuzzy little cute face that you love with the milk on its white whiskers. It flashes a picture of the bedroom where it usually sleeps while you're at work. And immediately you go to the bedroom to see if Kitty is still asleep. You go to the bedroom, you don't see Kitty. You go, "Here, kitty, 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 kitty." And there is no Kitty. Suddenly your eye passes the window and a picture flashes in your mind of Kitty crawling out the open window. You look at the window. No, it's closed. Okay, "Here, kitty, 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 kitty." Still no Kitty. And then a picture flashes in your mind of the bed, under the bed, where the kitty always likes to play with all the dust balls. And you stoop down, look under the bed, but Kitty's not there. On your way up, your eye happens to catch the open door of the bathroom. And again, a picture flashes in your mind of Kitty underneath all the dirty laundry in your laundry hamper in the bathroom. And you rush to the bathroom, you open up the laundry hamper, and lo and behold, there is Kitty. All All those images are flashing out of your collective unconscious from past experiences, from past events, full of emotion, and they're coming up to help you solve the problem of where is Kitty? Okay, now there's another part of your brain, the cerebral prefrontal cortex, and this is not hardwired. This is a blank slate waiting for input. You might say a computer programmer's job to write software on it. Language, cultural and societal inputs, all of these things, all the knowledge that you will start to acquire will be written upon that cortex, forming your personality and your own personal culture. So you see, you have two really parts, this hardwired limbic system, which connects with the collective unconscious and has a closed neurological loop into your body, acts reflexively, intuitively, searches the collective unconscious, works with the visual cortex to create spontaneously solutions to problems and to bring up ideas, mostly moving through pictures. Another part of your brain which is involved in rational thinking, a place where language, culture, and society all write their programs on your brain as you learn them in life, as you develop and you grow. So stimuli through our five senses causes movement in our body, which immediately stimulates emotions. Emotions are vibratory and chemical, coming from the hormones. And this movement, these emotions, are based on pictures that are flashed upon our brain, combining with memory from the collective unconscious and instinctive and reflexive programming from the limbic brain. And all of this produces a kind of creative, intuitive response that then is interpreted by the prefrontal cortex, rational thinking. Now, in this sequential order of connection between the motor cortex, emotions, memory, all of that happens before this process kicks in the cerebral prefrontal lobes. And they step in to give advice, to pass judgment, to censor, to interpret the stimuli. And now that's really a bit of information that's important to our discussion about creativity. So, what has gone wrong? Well, let's look at how the brain actually develops with age. At about 7 or 8 years old, the child starts to feel their own self-consciousness. They sort of separate from that being an extension of their father and mother's consciousness, and they start to realize they're a self, an entity. And at this point, they become very aware of judgment, critique, evaluation, censoring by other people. They can be shamed. They can be made to feel guilty. And at this point, they begin to develop and write upon those prefrontal lobes opinions, judgments, evaluations of their behavior, of what is good, of what is right, of what is appropriate, of what is standard for the society. Now, the intellect, one facet of the conscious mind, begins to develop at this point a repertoire of advice and judgment that can form the absolute opinions by which you will live the rest of your life. As you get older, the conscious mind becomes more and more a process of learning masses of information and growing as whole separate identity. And it takes on a surge at about 10 or 11 years old, and the intellect becomes supreme. It's assigned to understanding the dynamics of input, information, and emotions and memory that come up from the unconscious. Your intellect structures a logic around your life events and begins to create an habitual response that's not always reliably true. And you begin to look at everything through the assumptions that you made in your early formative years. Often a distortion from the truth coming from those early perceptions develops by your intellect, and your intellect rules over the collective unconscious and the more spontaneous intuitive part of your brain. The intuitive response of your brain, your limbic brain, can be overridden by the intellect. And the intellect can become an absolute bully. And the intellect being in your head can act as a censor. It's always on guard, holding the keys to a cell that it often locks up the creative process that's developing in another part of your brain. So let me give you an example. When I was 7, maybe years old, and I was in class, and we were singing in our class, and I had a very, very high voice. Obviously, my high voice was irritating to the teacher, or she felt it was out of tune or something. It doesn't really make any difference. But she said to me that I should whisper. She didn't want me to sing because my voice was disturbing the rest of the kids. And this judgment upon my voice at that early age, just as that part of my brain was beginning to develop and my own identity of being an entity developed, shamed me and made me feel that my voice was something bad and something that was not pleasant and certainly not capable of singing. And this was a early year formation of my beginning growing intellect that exerted a forbidding kind of control over the other part of my brain, which was intuitive, reflexive, creative, and spontaneously reacting. And it caused a huge amount of problem in my life. It wasn't until I began to study theater, and it was still hanging around at that time, causing me a lot of problems, that I decided to take that on and to debunk that formative censorship of my voice. And it was a long journey, I can tell you, because it was a very effective one. But eventually I was happy to debunk that. So this is sort of the process that is going on. The more you are gripped in your intellect, the less access you have to your mysterious unconscious and the easy interplay between so many parts of the brain and body systems that work together, coming from the limbic system through the body back to the visual cortex and the collective unconscious. And this intellect can become just well, as I said, it can really become a bully, prohibiting you from, first of all, believing that you are creative, and second of all, from exercising your creativity. So we can conclude that we have an inner critic, a judge, and that our emotions and intuitive center response is often locked up in a prison cell by this critic. Now, thought happens in the language center of the brain, and every thought also carries an emotional charge with it. These charges interact with the stored memory of the limbic system and the creative unconscious, but they can be overridden by the censoring intellect, and that's what's important for us to know. We have some keys to release ourselves from these distortions and the lockbox of your creativity. And the first one is imagery. So the use of pictures, not words, to quiet the intellect. Language belongs to the intellect. Images belong to the instinctive body and are essential to the freedom of the creative process. So using your brain as it was designed means seeing your thoughts, seeing what you are really seeing in detail before your eyes. The more clearly you see and observe what it is you're looking at, the more liberated your brain is to do what it will do intuitively. This is why children learn so quickly. If you try to teach a child intellectually through words and steps of analysis how to do something, you will fail. But if you just show them. They are so incredibly quick to learn. I used to work with small children, 5, 6-year-olds, in violin. I wasn't teaching them violin. I was teaching them how to use their body to hold the violin and the bow, and how to make their bodies be at ease with the violin. And I never, ever spoke to them about the reason why or the steps of analysis that would make their body more relaxed and release some of the tension. No, I only showed them and spoke to them in pictures, metaphors. And they got it, and they got it right away. Children are so quick to learn because at early ages they learn through visual pictures. They mimic you. It's only later, once the rational intellect begins to develop and dominate, that they lose a lot of this. And that's why we as adults have a hard time actually learning physical things. Our intellect is standing in the way. Bottom line, the brain thinks in pictures. So, number 2, get on your feet. Movement stimulates the connection to feelings and images resourced from the collective unconscious. Get on your feet. I'm always saying this to my students. I give them a subject to improvise on and give them some time to do it. And the first thing they do is to go and sit down in a corner and try to think about it with their intellect. So I'm always running behind them saying, get on your feet. Think on your feet with pictures through movement. Movement will stimulate pictures. You see, a muscular armor, a kind of restriction, builds around us as it tries to control emotions coming out of our limbic brain that we have been programmed by our prefrontal cortex to stop. For instance, if we are a child and we are standing in front of our teacher who is about to give us a note to take home to our parents telling us that we do not have a very good grade for today's assignment, we might feel like we want to cry. We might feel the tears coming up in our eyes and our bottom lip shaking because pictures are coming up in our mind of the last time I took a note home to my father and my mom and what my mom said and the argument they had between them and the fact that they didn't let me go then to my friend's house to play that afternoon. And those pictures are coming up. It's stimulating an emotion and a movement in our body, and the child wants to respond. However, the intellect comes in and says, no, you don't cry. Boys don't cry. My older brother told me that so many times. He's been telling me that for 3 years, that I was, if I cried, I was simply a crybaby, my little baby sister, and boys don't cry. And so my intellect tells me, don't cry. And I have to have a physical armor that comes in and locks the jaw and squeezes the sphincter of my tear glands and creates a tension in the back of my throat, and my hands clench, and I determine I will not cry. And this physical armor builds a kind of casket around our body's ability to express itself. So one of the techniques to stimulate creativity is to move, to get your body released from that armor and moving. I used to always say, when I was studying ballet so diligently in my early 20s, I never needed to go to a therapist. I was confident of that, or a counselor if things were going bad or there was trauma in my life, because I could just go to ballet. I could just go to class that morning, and by the time class ended up and I had spent an hour and a half moving and imaging and totally into pictures and body and movement, I was fine. It released all of that imprisoned, not only creative, but emotional expression that my body is designed to do naturally. So get on your feet, move, improvise with ideas, and be sure that you settle the intellect back in its position by using images and not words. It will feel intimidated to enter into your process if you use images. Third thing is to express your emotions. So you have a voice, you have a body, you have a soul that feels. You need to express what you feel and make a habit of it. I don't mean just when you have an exercise in class or just when somebody makes you mad or just when you have an exciting thing happen to you. I mean all the time. You need to express how you feel. And if there's nobody around, that's fine. That's even better. Then you have more freedom. Express to yourself how you feel. You look at things, you ask yourself, how do you feel about this? Wow, this is the nicest pasta dish I ever made. I really love the subtle combination of those spices together and how I presented it. It looks really beautiful. I could really serve this to just about anybody and they would think that it was a cuisine. You get the picture. Talk to yourself. Express to yourself as well as to others constantly how you feel. And let that move naturally, intuitively, reflexively into your body's movement. They are connected. As you receive a stimuli, as I pointed out at the beginning of this talk, the first thing that happens is the body moves. And then the body sounds. The body wants to sound. This is a neurological fact. When the body moves, it wants to sound. The fact that it doesn't is a process of the intellectual bully telling you it's not appropriate to sound. When you are a child, tiny little child, they are sounding constantly. As they move, they sound. They sound about everything. They lay in their crib and gurgle and coo and babble for hours sometimes, just sounding as they move. Lots of times older people, when they get very old and have lost the intellectual bully has lost its power, they don't care anymore, they also sound as they move, as they work, as they move through their life, even in its limited scope. They begin to sound again. Sound is not just words. Sound is all kinds of autistic responses, humming and singing and sighing and groaning and all kinds of things. Teach yourself that expression through your body, through your voice, which is a part of your body, and through your soul is something natural, reflexive, intuitive. You don't have to work at it. What you have to do via negativa is get rid of the intellectual bully that tells you and censors you and evaluates you and judges you and assesses your response in a way that locks you up. Third thing, increase your sensitivity by observation. That's what I meant when I said learn to think as the brain thinks, by seeing and what you are seeing to really see it in detail. There's an exercise we often do in acting class where we take an ordinary object such as a writing pen and we look at it, and I give them 10-15 minutes in which they do nothing except observe this pen. You might say, well, good grief, I need 15 seconds, I can observe the pen. No, you can't. Not really. Not really. If you keep asking yourself questions, how much does it weigh? Where's its fulcrum point? Where does the texture change on it? What part of it is more light? What part of it is more easy to manage in terms of my fingers? Can I put it somewhere else in my hand? What are all the colors that I see? What are the degrees of gloss as opposed to matte I see on the pen? What exactly is the process of the ink coming out of this pen? And so on and so on. And as you begin to observe this pen in an obsessive, detailed way, you become actually engrossed in this process. That's what really seeing is, really observing is. And we often don't observe that way. Of course, we don't have obsessive amounts of time to do that for every detail in our life. But I'm talking about the practice of truly seeing and not just staring at or glancing over things, but taking the time to truly see in it. This stimulates the brain a lot. As I told you, the visual cortex is huge, and it stores everything you see and begins to mix it with that creative soup in your collective unconscious, and begins to mix with the emotional charge of thoughts and memory in your limbic brain. And it all works together to be a rich and abundant resource center for creativity. Next, creativity is a muscle, and it must be exercised. You must go to the gym and exercise your creativity, just like you would exercise your arm if you wanted to lift weights. You must start to build in that exercising of your creativity a trust for it, a trust that it's there, that it's good, that it's always there, that you're not going to run out of creativeness. It's always going to be there. I said to a friend of mine recently, as I was directing a show, I said the creative load is really heavy on me because I must do this spontaneously. It was the nature of the project. I said, of course I have a framework, but the actual creative response to the problem on the stage is something that actually can only come about once we are all there. And in that instant, when we're all there, it has to happen. It has to come to me. But I am confident it will. I don't panic that it won't. I don't go to that moment where we're all there on the stage and we need to now act, solve the creative problem. I don't panic that I'll be dry at that moment, or dead, or empty. No, I'm absolutely confident. As I move, as I begin to talk, as we begin to work, it comes. It's there. And you must develop that trust of your creativity and know that it will be there. But that takes exercising it. So I'm going to close this talk with a couple of exercises you can do. One of them is something I always do in acting class for my beginning actors when we're talking about creativity, to begin to understand that you are creative and that there's no limit to it. So I usually lay them on the floor in a position, an A position, with laying flat on their back with their arms and legs totally out to the sides. So they're in a very open and surrendered kind of position on the floor, closing your eyes. And then I simply prompt them with their eyes closed to visualize the answers to my questions. So I start by asking them, where are you? Are you outside? Are you inside? In what position are you? Are you standing? Are you walking? Are you sitting? Are you laying? Are you in an acrobatic position? Where are you? What position are you in? What's beneath your feet? Is it ground? Is it carpet? Is it a linoleum hallway? Is it clouds? Where are you? Where are your feet? Then I say, look straight ahead of you. What do you see? Look to your right. What's there? What's the temperature? Are you cold? Are you hot? What's the temperature? What time of day is it? Or is there a day? Is it space? And there is no day or night. And I just keep asking them questions. Eventually, I ask them to take a step. And then ask them, where are you going? And then I lead them. This usually takes 20, 25 minutes. I just keep asking them questions And their job is simply to look, because the images will pop up on their visual cortex. And most important, release the intellect from its dominant position by using pictures, by seeing pictures, not creating words. See the first thing that comes, that pops up on that visual cortex, and don't allow the intellect to censor it. If it's an orange cloud, it's an orange cloud. That's what's underneath my feet, an orange cloud. What's in front of you? A silver snake. Are you cold? Are you hot? I'm freezing. My fingers have icicles hanging from them. It's really fun. It's really, really fun to do. And if you have to do it by yourself and you don't want to prompt yourself, record prompts and then play them for yourself. And begin to get in touch with the visual cortex of your brain, which is flashing pictures at such a high rate in your brain, it would just astound you to see how quickly they flash and call up memory, call up emotion, call up history. All of that begins, as I said, to stir up the soup between the limbic brain and the collective unconscious, the visual cortex. It all begins to create this rich soup that is full of the potential to creatively feed into your life every single moment of the day. Second exercise is to improvise without this critic through your body. So the previous exercise, it's best if you concentrate visually and remain in this position on the floor. The second one, it is to get on your feet and to move with your body, giving yourself visual metaphors, such as a snake in a basket. That's all. That's all. Simple. A snake in a basket. Now, with only that information, start with your body to express a snake in a basket from any point of view you want. Maybe you're the basket. Maybe you're the snake. Maybe you're the person who would like to open that basket. And feel free to change positions, to change roles constantly as you work with your body to express the snake, for instance. Don't just think literally, oh gee, how could my body be a snake? That isn't really the idea. Think about the spirit of the snake, the snake's intellect, the snake's basic undulative movement. It's slithering, it's smooth moving, it's flashy tongue, it's keen eyes, and just let various fragmented parts come into your visual cortex and let your body intuitively and reflexively respond to that. Again, you must sit the critic down. You must calm the intellect down, that it not judge you, that it not say to you, oh, this is stupid, you look ridiculous, this is just child's play, this is the intellect, and this is who has the keys, locking up your creativity. There's a place for our intellect. I'm not banning the intellect, of course not. It's a marvelous part of our brain, but it needs to be put in its place. It needs to operate in coordination, in harmony, in balance with the rest of our brain's functions in order for us to be both creatively fluid and excitingly fascinated with life and creatively operating in life, and at the same time full of knowledge and skill and learned behavior that we can interpret life. That has to be a balance. And in our society, our intellect has become this huge, overpowering dictator, and especially with a long index finger that is critically wagging at your creativity and judging it. So I like to take metaphors, crazy metaphors, like a mouse in my pillow, and simply start with my movement to imitate ideas and pictures that come up in that. The scary process of laying my cheek on a pillow with a mouse in it. The fun little idea that a mouse is moving in and out of the feathers of my Danish down-feathered pillow and finding a soft place to lie. Just all kinds of things. The movement of a mouse. What can be the movement of the mouse? Well, the movement of the mouse is very quick in short little movement. That's just one aspect of the mouse, okay? Another aspect of the mouse is his little nose going, his little whiskers going with his sensors trying to get information. There is all kinds of fragments of information that come from the picture of a mouse in your pillow. Take one fragment at a time and try to give it a movement. Try to have your body give some kind of shape, movement, form to the picture you see of that one little fragment. Don't work in a literal way and also in a presentational way. You're not presenting this for anybody. This is a matter of your body working with your visual cortex, working with your reflexive, intuitive response to stimuli, and integrating itself. As you do this, you'll start to see emotion come up in you because emotion is stimulated by movement and connected to the pictures. And you will find yourself growing in emotional awareness, and hopefully you will take that into expression. Okay, I hope that's helpful to you. This is a problem I deal with my students all the time, and certainly one I've been through myself in my life. So I hope you will find a great sense of overcoming this misconception about creativity. So I'll say goodbye for now. This is Kathleen Ann Thompson, Director of Bellhurst Productions. Keep in touch with us, and I'd love to hear what you're interested in hearing. And we'll gather here again on our next episode of Whispers in the Wings. You've been listening to Kathleen Ann Thompson, Director of Bellhurst Productions. Visit us at www.bellhurst.com.